Mizzah, it's the show about Mizzah Tee. It's the show about Mizzah Tee.
Navon Wise, it's crazy how it's supposed to be the standards now. LOL. Have low expectations now for Nintendo Directs. Like, yeah, that's a new standard, is to have low expectations for Nintendo Direct. That's lame. I've never, as a Nintendo fan, all the way up to the Switch, from late Super Nintendo, is when I was like a full-on hardcore Nintendo fan, to to now. I've never had low expectations about Nintendo, ever. The GameCube, like, I'm thinking of launches, like N64. Like, I actually wasn't checking for N64. That's why I said late Super Nintendo, until my buddy Carl from high school was like, yo, better get on that Ultra 64, man. That thing is going to be this. He was so hyped about that thing. And it's funny because N64 and Dreamcast were two consoles that other people hyped me up to. And they ended up being two of my favorite consoles ever. But yeah, like, I was feeling like I'm a big boy. I'm going to stop this video game stuff. And that was a different time then. So there was a bigger stigma on video games than there is now. So I was like, well, I'm adult now, so I'm not going to be playing video games much longer here. And so I wasn't really checking for the next generation of game systems. Super Nintendo was going to be it for me. I was going to be done. And my buddy Carl, man, he was just, between classes, at lunch, he's like, yo, man, you got to check out this. It's an Ultra 64. It was still called the Ultra 64 then. And he'd have his Nintendo Power magazine. I would have mine too, because I wasn't a full-time subscriber until 96 or 97. Before I was like a full-time Nintendo Power subscriber. I'd subscribe a year here or there when I had the money. I'd buy the magazine from the stands or whatever. But I wasn't a full-time subscriber until then, so I could maintain a subscription. But he was like, he had his magazine out and on the lunch table. Yo, man, look at that Mario, man. Mario's gonna be crazy. Final Fantasy. It's gonna be crazy. Look at the graphics. He was all about the graphics, Silicon workstations, and he hyped me up to all that. And it's gonna be on cartridges. It's gonna load fast. None of that slow loading like you get on Sega CD, because Sega CD was a thing. And then ultimately PlayStation came out, but he I don't know where he is now. I would like to run into him or see what he's up to now. But he was a full-on crazy Nintendo fan back then. So I just wonder where he would be if he's still like that today. But, like, I never had low expectations, even when I wasn't expecting anything. When I heard about the N64 or the Ultra 64, I had high expectations because, Carl, my buddy, was like, have high expectations. From what he was saying, it's going to have this, it's going to do that, blah, blah, blah. And N64 is my favorite console of all time, still is. Because it was so mind-blowing to me, coming from the Super Nintendo, Sega Genesis, to that. That transition will never be topped, as far as I'm concerned. And it's just a mind-blowing transition and, amazing games that I play to this day. So my expectations are high. I didn't have low expectations when they were talking, oh, this Zelda 64. It's like, oh, I'm going to temper my low expectations. It's probably not going to be that great. No, my expectations were high. And every time I got a Nintendo VHS, youngsters, this VHS is at this VCR. It was VCR player, and it played VHSs. And it was a tape, and video was on a tape. Every time I got one of those in the mail from whatever, because of my subscription or something I bought and did a mail-in thing, I had high expectations of that video. That I always did, and I was always very happy. I can't think of one time where any of my VHSs, I still have them, my Nintendo VHS where I was like, oh, that was disappointing. That was lame. Never. Because I was always getting my mind blown. Donkey Kong Country VHS blew my mind when I saw that game. That game blew my mind. Star Fox VHS blew my mind. When the guy slapped that little... Pull it out. I have it right here. When that guy... It was a corny video. But when that guy came out and had this thing... This is called a Rumble Pack. And he had the fake Sony guy and the fake Sega guy there, and he was showing them how to use it. Because they had kidnapped the Nintendo guy. It was a corny video, but it was it was cool. I was a kid then, and so they kidnapped him and made him show him what was the new technology Nintendo had. It's like, oh, this thing's called the Rumble Pack, and you slap it in, and you can feel the R-Wing shake and rumble and all this stuff. And my mind was blown. Like, my expectations were high. My expectations were always high because of things like that. And I got the Donkey Kong Country video, and it showed all these games. Over time, if you look back on the N64's library, you're like, oh, it barely had 300 games on it. Yeah, like that. In retrospect, isn't that big of a thing? But at the time, I wasn't wanting for anything. I mean, maybe a few more RPGs would have been nice, but I was super content with my N64. It was a different time, and you played your games for longer, and you played them over and over again, and you had a different mentality then. But even with that, we were getting regular releases, like regular information. And this was the VHS era. We had to wait in the mail for VHSs, or if you had a fast enough internet, maybe you would wait a few minutes to buffer a 2-minute video. But you had magazines. You check out the pictures, and you'd read the articles. Something nobody does anymore is read articles. Now people watch videos of other people reading articles because I'm too busy for that. I can't even read the news myself. So my expectations are always high for Nintendo. They were high coming off the N64. They were super high. It was like, oh, all right, Nintendo 64 was amazing. Had amazing games on it. Now the GameCube is going to be an evolution of that. And now it's on disc, so we don't have to worry about storage. And, just think of all the stuff the GameCube could do. Like the stuff that was announced for it. Even if I feel like the first party stuff wasn't as strong, overall than the N64, it had the freaking Wavebird came, that was exciting. This is the first time we had, a really good wireless controller. Like, this is as good as any wireless controller we have on console today. Obviously it doesn't have Rumble. It's the only thing it's missing, and a rechargeable battery. But this was flipping amazing to me. And you had games that blew our minds. Metroid Prime blew everybody's minds. The visuals in that game. Star Wars Rogue Leader blew everybody's mind. They were comparing that game to the new releases of Star Wars at the time, as far as the graphics go, the visual, the fidelity and stuff. And like I said, there was so many things happening. You had the Game Boy Advance connector cable, to where you can do all these weird things, isometric things on your GameCube using Game Boy Advance games. You had the Tingle Tuner, for Wind Waker. You had oh my God, what was the thing? You had the Game Boy. What do they call it on Luigi's Mansion? The Game Boy Horror. You had, there was a talk about Luigi's Mansion being 3D, and that didn't happen at the end. Again, it is built for a 3D setup, but it never happened. So there was a lot of excitement around that. And what was Rare going to do? Obviously, that didn't come to fruition because Rare bounced. But there was a lot of excitement. Even though the GameCube didn't sell well, there was a lot of excitement for fans around it. and high expectations. Nobody was like, oh man, Wave Race probably, I'm not gonna have high expectations of that game. It's probably gonna suck. No, Wave Race 64. It's not really called that. It's just Wave Race. But Wave Race 64 exceeded like anything I thought I'd see at that time. The water physics in that game in 1996 melted my brain, and how it moved, and it just felt like you were really on water, and it was perfect. And then Blue Stone was like, oh man, the graphics gonna be stupid in this game, and it's still gonna have those cool water physics. I didn't love it as much, but it blew my mind. Pikmin came out and melted my brain. I was like, this game is crazy. Well, it doesn't make any sense, but it works so well. Smash Melee, like, it blew Smash 64 out of the water. Like, Melee is still played and loved to this day. People are still fanatical about that game. Like, nothing in Nintendo's history tells me to have low expectations. The Wii blew my mind. Like, again, that was another period where I was like, all right, I'm really done with video games now. It's just going to be prettier, this generation stuff. I'm moving on. And Nintendo started talking. They showed that graphic where they showed the Wii, and they showed all those games that I grew up playing, and it was all going, sucking into my Wii. That's whoa, whoa. And it was, what I'm talking about, the graphic where those game logos were, dissipating into the Wii, and that meant all my NES, Super Nintendo, N64 stuff was going to be played on this new console. All right, I'm back in, kinda. And then they had this crazy new controller that blew my mind. And they showed just the Wii remote by itself. It's like, what is that? I can't play a game like that. And they showed the nunchuck, and it just like this expectations went through the roof. Now, some of those expectations weren't met as far as like the potential what the Wii could do, and even into the Wii U. But I was excited. I was excited by that stuff. Like, so for me to have low expectations, it just doesn't make sense to me. Because low expectations mean I'm done. Like, why even play? Why even care to play if your expectations are low? Like, I just don't understand that mentality at all. Galaxy blew my mind. Like, how can they reinvent Mario, and it's just so amazing. And how that game looked and ran and played on the 88 megabyte or 88 megabit RAM capabilities of the Wii was just like magic. This has to be magic, how they make this thing work. And just the Wii itself, with the channels and going to the Wii Shop channel, or the WiiWare, or what was the channel where they showed you little video clips, and you would see quick little kind of interviews and things about games. I mean, Metroid Prime and all this kind of stuff. That kind of stuff was very cool to me. Like, I'd used the Wii Weather Channel. This is before we had smart devices, so this stuff came in handy, knowing these things before you left the house. And I used my Wii to do all that stuff, and it was an amazing console. And it's just super underrated. I don't know. I mean, it's because it's not as powerful, and it's called the Wii, and it had motion controls. Man, when I get to my Wii collection, I'm just going to shut all that noise down, because it's like that console reinvigorated me as a gamer. Like, it is a super gamer console. Yes, it got accolades for being on Oprah and Ellen DeGeneres, and it had Waggleware and shovelware, but it had great games that utilized the Wii remote really well. And again, mind-blowing. It changed the way I played video games, and I was all in. And then the Wii U came out, and it was just like, I'm confused, but are you really trying to push the Wii thing further? Because it's not really going to work. But I understand that you're trying to continue that motion stuff, but you're not adding a motion controller in the box. I mean, you're just kind of, everybody has a Wii. So we're going to continue Wii, kind of, but we're going to do more GameCube stuff as well. So we're just kind of disjointed with that. But I was super happy with this freaking console. I love this console. Like this is a great, phenomenal idea that again wasn't fully utilized. A lot of it had to do with the software that Nintendo didn't put out. That should have utilized this thing more. It's a little dusty. It shouldn't be, but like, and being able to use everything I could use on Wii to control for a controller, all the way down to GameCube, like that's insane. And I can bring over my Wii stuff, and it has a little area to live in. It can live on my Wii U. That's great. Backwards compatibility. That's great. Like, my expectations are high, man. Like, you know, it didn't live up to its potential, but that didn't change the fact that I was super hyped about this console and loved it to the last day. Well, I still play it. I mean, there's not a last day for me. I still love this thing. I have backlog on this thing. So, this is exciting to me. This is, you know, I have high expectations. I had high expectations the whole time. Go back and watch my videos at that time, you know. My expectations about Star Fox, my expectations about Metroid Prime 4, which we didn't get, were high. Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze, freaking amazing. My expectations were high for that game, and they were exceeded. Super Mario 3D World, my expectations were high for that. I didn't go in to any Nintendo Direct or any Nintendo E3 with low expectations. I went in with high expectations. Now, if they were, my expectations weren't met, or at least, you know, somewhat met, or kind of met, didn't quite get to where I wanted it, but it still has some stellar announcements, I was fine with that. Yeah, but I didn't dwell on what I wanted and didn't get. I was happy to get the good stuff, even though my expectations were high, and maybe I wanted a little bit more. There was enough that I got during the Wii U era that I was happy about up until 2015, obviously, and I didn't hide that. You know, I was very disappointed. A lot of Nintendo fans were. We had therapy session podcasts all over the place for Nintendo E3 2015. So, but up until that point, we had amazing experiences on Wii U. Amazing. Bayonetta 2. I remember the first time I cracked that game open, it felt like I was playing something new. Like I was, you know, the game, I played Bayonetta, but Bayonetta 2 destroys Bayonetta. Destroys it. The same people made this game? Like, that game was amazing. My expectations were high for it, and they were exceeded with that game. Mario Kart 8. Exceeded. Splatoon. Super hyped for Splatoon when it was announced. What is this crazy thing? You're a kid, you're a squid? What is this? That was like... That's Nintendo, though. That is Nintendo. They come at you with the off-the-wall Pikmin thing, the Splatoon thing, and you just blown away. It's like, how does this work? How does this make sense? But it always does. And, you know, all that whole time, you know, we didn't know the name of it, but Breath of the Wild was blowing our minds. That first, when Iwata snapped his finger, or not Iwata, Aonuma snapped his fingers, and Breath of the Wild, Hyrule Field showed up, and Link was on that horse. Amazing. Blew everybody's minds. And you saw the little trailer, and he galloped off, and he fought the Guardian on that little bridge sequence or whatever. Blew everybody's minds. We were thirsty coming out of that. Hyrule Warriors. I love that game. Loved it. I must have close to 200 hours in that game. I did almost everything in that game, and I'm gonna rebuy it on Switch because it adds the 3DS co-op stuff and blaze through that again. But my expectations were high the whole time. Star Fox. My expectations were high. Not met at all. But it's not my fault that my expectations weren't met, or at least good expectations aren't met. That's not my fault. I'm not going, oh my God, I have to have blah, blah, blah. I'm not like those people who were talking about the Switch beforehand. It needs to have this. They had their checklists. It had to have this, and that. If it doesn't have that, I'm super disappointed. I didn't have the checklist. I had high expectations for the Switch. And when I saw it, I was blown away. I wasn't like some of those people out there who are eating real nice on Switch right now. I wasn't like them, their reaction to the Switch. I was like, this thing is going to be gangbusters. This thing is going to sell like crazy. I said that right away. Unlike some of these people who are, less happy about the Switch after the reveal, I'll say. They wanted that big, crazy, stupid HD console that had a fan on it that could take off into orbit. But no, that's not Nintendo. Nintendo doesn't need that. Nintendo does their own thing. And that's what I loved about the Switch. The Switch was like, oh, yeah, that gyro, we don't have one-to-one pointer stuff right now. We don't have that anymore. But we'll give you this gyro. It's pretty good. It's pretty close in many ways. We'll give you that. Gyro aiming. That's beautiful. Yeah, we're still going to do that. Oh, it's a traditional controller. Where's mine? I don't know where it is. Yeah, it's a traditional controller. Let me pull this together. Get my visual going here. Let's do it all together here. Yeah, this thing is quirky as hell. Yeah, it's a traditional controller. You have dual analogs. You got 4 action buttons. You have your D-pad here. You have a share button. You can take pictures. You can go home, start, select. All that is there. So you have your traditional thing. But you know what? Slide that on out of there, and that's a controller by itself. Got shoulder buttons. Blew my mind. I thought that was genius. Oh yeah. So you got 2 controllers technically for a lot of games right here out of the box. Something Nintendo hadn't done since the Super Nintendo. Did the Super Nintendo have 2 controllers? I can't remember. I feel like it did. I feel like it came with 2. Pretty sure it did. So here you are. Very quirky and untraditional, which I loved. And, you like that Wii experience where you had, where you had one side of your controls. You have one side of your controls on this hand, and one side on that other hand, Put that together. Oh, you got split action, split Joy-Cons. This is great. I played Zelda all the way through just like this, Mario Odyssey all the way through just like this, and a bunch of other games just like this, because this is super comfortable. I can just kind of chill back, You know how it goes. Like, this blew my mind. High expectations coming out of that January event in 2017. And 2017 did not disappoint me one bit. I was blown away by that year. Started off a little bit slow first couple months, but man, it opened up. Right after Mario Kart 8 Deluxe came over, it opened up. It felt like 3DS. When the 3DS, 2011, when it first came out, it had a decent launch. Decent. Nothing great there. And then it got its Mario Kart 8. It got Ocarina of Time 3D for the 3DS, and it just took off after that. You got Super Mario, you got Mario Kart 7, you got Super Mario 3D Land, and it was over after that. Switch, the 3DS took off. And that's what I was feeling about this bad boy. But this thing was selling from the beginning. It had none of those issues. So, high expectations I had for the Joy-Cons and what they could do. And then when they didn't work the way I thought they would, they broke down on me. It was like, that's not Nintendo. That's not Nintendo-like. My expectations are high for Nintendo hardware. Because they should be. Because this console, this is my day one N64 controller. 1996. This is it right here. And it works perfectly. And the rumble pack that goes into it works perfectly. And the memory cards still work great. I mean, look at this. Look at it. Look at that. It's clean. So, when I have a controller that I just had barely a year start doing weird wonky things on me, that's my expectations should be high. You know? This thing still works perfectly too. You know, this is a wireless controller from 20 years ago. Almost 20 years ago. 17 years ago. And it works perfectly. My NES, my Super Nintendo, all still work perfectly. And so, I'm not supposed to have high expectations based on the history of this company? No! The minute I start having low expectations, I'm admitting that this company is not what it used to be. And I can't live with that. I can't be a fan like that. I can't be one of those types of fans. That doesn't work for me. Because Nintendo has always been top quality. No matter if they were number 1 or number 3 or 2 or whatever position they were in the market, their quality has never been matched by anybody. And to see cracked, switches, cracks around the vents and the power button, or like I've seen on both of my kids' Switch, and to see, Joy-Cons that I take great care of, to see them falter based on a design flaw, and it is a design flaw, that they had to get a lawsuit to admit to, and apologize for. So, no, my expectations are going to be high, and they're always going to be high. And I'm not one of these new wave Nintendo fans who don't realize or know what Nintendo came from and what they're about. I'm not one of those, and you're not going to mold me into, your mentality. It's like the Star Wars fans, the newer Star Wars fans who didn't grow up with what I grew up with. And when I see cracks, I'm going to point those out. They want to try to hammer you into, the type of fan they are. Or you don't like it, you can just leave. No, you can leave. I've been here. This is the beginning. You can leave. If you're about accepting lesser quality, you can leave. So, no, my expectations are not going to drop. My faith might. I hope it doesn't. But no. My expectations will not falter, will not go down because it makes you feel better as a fan. Nah, bruh. Nah, I ain't getting down with that. I don't get down with that. Nope. You can do that. That's not going to be me.